Good morning on this Sunday, July 12th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. Several cities across Georgia are mandating masks as coronavirus cases and hospitalizations continue to surge. The governor calls in the National Guard to help deal with violence in the city of Atlanta, and Senator Kelly Loeffler goes after the Black Lives Matter movement. Theron, Phil, Janelle, and Kathy are all here joining us from their homes. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
This week, several city leaders, including Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, took their own action to try and stop the spread of the coronavirus by requiring you to wear a mask or face fines.
I specifically asked our governor about allowing Atlanta to go forward with mandating masks in our city. He refused.
Despite the governor's refusal, Mayor Bottoms, who tested positive for COVID-19, signed an executive order mandating masks be worn in her city. It also prohibits gatherings of more than 10 people within the city limits. The governor's office said these mandates are not able to be enforced, but stopped short of threatening legal action.
You know, mandating that, I think, is a bridge too far for me right now.
Other cities that mandate masks as of right now, they include Brookhaven, Athens, East Point, and Savannah. So let's get into the politics of masks. Can't believe that masks are political. Phil, though, were you glad to see that the governor at this point is not going to take any action against any of these cities?
Yes, I think it would be wrong to start enforcing mask ordinances. I think that people basically are going to have to make their own decisions and be comfortable. I don't have a problem if there are hot spots around the state where you might have to have masks. So I think the governor is encouraging masks to do the right thing, follow the CDC guidelines. So I think we're kind of at an even keel. And as I said last week, I really think we need to keep an eye on the hospitalizations. If they start rising, that's going to be where some other decisions are going to have to be made in the weeks to come.
We see that they already are, Phil. And you know, Theron, Mayor Bottoms came under criticism for holding a press conference while she was awaiting coronavirus test results, which then turned out to be positive. Talk about what led up to the mayor's decision on masks.
Well, I think the mayor really had no choice at a time where you heard her say that she sort of reached out to the governor's office to say, hey, join me in this call for the people of Atlanta to be mandated to wear a mask. He declined that. And now, we said last week that the governor did a good job not entering into sort of a back and forth battle with Savannah Mayor Van Johnson, but when it came to Atlanta, it definitely was something that that politically that kind of got out of control. You know, but one of the things also, Lori, is that every time the mayor goes out and does a press conference, if she attends a funeral, if she attends a protest, she goes and she gets tested. That's sort of the proactive thing that she has been doing because she's the mayor of the city, so she has to attend these events. And so the criticism that she's received about attending a press conference when she did not know that she had tested positive for COVID-19 was just blatantly false. But I think going forward, the mayor should definitely be commended, and I want to, make her a winner this week for coming out and saying to the people of Georgia, hey, it's hit home now. I have COVID-19, and she's been very open about things that transpired. And so it was a right move for the mayor to mandate masks in Atlanta because a lot of us were not taking this as seriously as we should have. And I do believe we got to move towards a statewide mandate for people to wear their masks.
Janelle, what do you think about that, this statewide mandate? I mean, I think, the science is on the side of wearing masks, and to me, it's just common sense. If there's some type of barrier, the chances of you getting coronavirus are lessened. At least, that's what the scientists say. So I don't understand why all this controversy about wearing a mask.
What I don't understand is why we're even talking about mandating something we can't enforce. It's simply a feel-good legislation. It makes people feel like the leader is doing something of some sort. But I find it very interesting that Mayor Bottoms seems to be a little bit reactive these days instead of proactive. She's now mandating masks, but she's not mandating that people not stand in front of burned down buildings with guns. And I don't understand why that's not more important. But overall, it's just a feel-good legislation. Those who are putting it in place, I mean, there's no way to enforce it, so it doesn't even exist.
Kathy, what do you think about that? Is this feel-good legislation?
No, I think it's really important legislation, and I wish the governor would just get off the dime and make it statewide. We're seeing a rise in cases that's alarming. The hospitals are now at capacity. By the time we talk about this next week, we're going to have the tragedy of hospitals being over capacity, and that's just a mathematical fact. You know, it's not speculation. We've been seeing the cases rise very, very steadily, and we've seen it coming. Hospitals know it, and we're opening up, surge capacity in, the World Congress Center again. So I just want to put that on the table. But I've certainly heard from business owners that having a mask mandate helps them be able to maintain control over their sites. When they put up, you have to wear a mask in my facility, and then people come back at them and say, I don't have to, having that mandate, even if you think it's unenforceable, is helpful to them and puts them in the proper space to get this done. And I see, we have to take this seriously. We're going to talk more about the economic impact of what's going on here, but we're not seeing leadership from the president, from the governor, and I dare say I think the mayor has been quite reactive, although I do agree with Theron that, you don't know you're positive till you're positive, and I think we need to talk about how difficult it is to find tests, to get tested, and get test results back in a timely manner in this state, because it's just simply not working.
Phil, I think we have seen some leadership from some of the local school districts. I mean, they announced, some of them, a delay in opening for in-person instruction. We saw the university system reverse course and now require masks on campuses. These are really difficult decisions for administrators, and I think, we have to face it. They're not going to make everyone happy. Phil?
Well, they are difficult decisions, but I think it's imperative that we reopen the schools and have as many in-person classes as we can. And I think you saw the statement from the American Pediatric Association that this is beneficial, especially for young children who are very, very low risk. And so I think the problem is not so much getting the young kids K through 12 into classes, to take that example. It's what happens after. Where do they go after school? We have to be careful. I do think that when you're having classes, whether it's at the university level or K through 12, you do have to have a temperature taking regimen and a testing regimen every day. I think that's going to be very important as we go into the fall. And as a footnote, I do think that we need to step up the testing collection centers. I think that's very important. And then you need more private and independent labs where you can take the test to these labs. And I think that's been a real problem, where the state and the governor can step in and make sure these independent labs, because these big labs can't handle a lot of the testing. We're seeing delays. And I think that's something that the state could work on right away.
It's a very good point. Theron, this week Democrats put out a news release stating that Georgia's economic recovery from COVID-19 ranks 50th when compared to the rest of the country. What are your thoughts on this? And were you surprised?
Definitely, if that's correct, and I assume that if the Democratic Party, did their research and put that ranking out, it's true. It's very sort of interesting to see that, because one of the main talking points from the GOP, Lori, has been that we had to begin the phased process of reopening to save the economy. I've said, repeated a quote that Governor Cuomo mentioned a couple weeks ago, is that at a time where we see COVID numbers going up, we see that the stock market is going down. And the stock market is not the only indicator of the economic impact of COVID-19, but we're definitely not seeing this surge and this boom to reopen the economy that a lot of the Republicans promised the American people. And so it's going to take all of us, small businesses, leadership in government, and citizens, to come together to figure out how can we rebuild this economy. But if this ranking is true, which I believe that the Democratic get their research and put that out, then that's very, very sad that we're in that state right now, and we got to really make sure that we do everything we can to increase that ranking.
Kathy, real quickly, because I know you were looking into some of these numbers, what did you find? I've got about 30 seconds here.
Yep, sure. You can go to the website. It's Wallet Hub. It's a technology company that does financing, and they studied the changes in unemployment numbers across week to week of during the pandemic that we're experiencing, and found that Georgia has actually dropped from 50th to 51st if you include Washington, D.C. So the early opening hasn't helped us. The lack of a plan and the lack of mandates on masks and other kinds of public health requirements has really devastated our economy.
All right, we will leave it there. Well, coming up, another showdown between Governor Kemp and Mayor Bottoms, this time over National Guard troops protecting the city. We'll be right back.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Well, after major violence in the city of Atlanta, including the murder of 8-year-old Sequoia Turner, who was shot and killed in the backseat of a car near the Wendy's, where police shot Rayshard Brooks. Well, protesters also vandalized the Georgia Department of Public Safety, and the governor had enough, sending in the National Guard. Phil, what do you think? Was that needed?
The National Guard was definitely needed. In fact, my only critique would be the governor should have sent it in earlier, like on Saturday, when we had the terrible rioting and destruction. Of all things, the Department of Public Safety building in downtown Atlanta was trashed, and so Mayor Bottoms lost control of law and order in the city, and public safety suffered for black, white, all citizens. And the fact that she doesn't give due process to police officers now that are involved in shootings is an absolute disgrace. I said this last week, I wish she would come out and say we are going to have due process for any of our officers that are involved in a shooting, and let's have the investigation, and then we make a determination rather than just summarily firing people based on videos or the cries of the mob. And so thank goodness the governor stepped in. He may have to step in some more because the police morale has been broken by this mayor.
Theron, the mayor disagreed with the move, but when you have 93 people shot in a month's time between the end of May to the end of June, people were comparing us to Chicago. So do you agree with the governor's decision on bringing in the National Guard?
Well, we first got to really dig deeper into the governor's decision. But before I get there, let's start with the mayor. Listen, I totally disagree with Phil that the mayor has totally lost control in law and order in this city. While crime is bad and the perception of crime is even worse, this is the mayor's number one priority. And if I tell you this, you guys are not going to believe it, but overall, the numbers show that crime overall right now in Atlanta is down compared to last year. But again, I understand, based on the shootings, based on the perception of crime, based on the killings and the murders of Sequoia Turner and others, we definitely need to do something about it. But in regards to the governor deciding to call up the National Guard, it was his opportunity to do so. I mean, he was like the governor. He can decide to declare a state of emergency anytime. I think the difference this time, though, Lori, is that when we saw the governor's office proactively reach out to the city of Atlanta during the protests from the George Floyd murder, we saw a level of communications. Now, I do know that there was a level of communications this time around, but I don't think it was probably as robust. But when the people who attacked the State Patrol office, we all knew then that Governor Kemp, just based on his history of dealing with the National Guard, he was going to call the National Guard up. But the other thing that was different this time, Lori, is the messaging that we heard from the governor's office of why he called the National Guard up. Clearly, the mayor and the governor have a philosophical differences of approaching public safety and crime in this state. But I do think that the messaging is what sort of got the mayor a little riled up, because it was a call for National Guard to protect state properties and to allow state patrol officers to continue to help out with different cities, but particularly the city of Atlanta with public safety. And so it wasn't to help the Atlanta primarily reduce crime, it was to protect state buildings. I think we got to make sure that our viewers know the overall intent of why he called the National Guard up.
But it seemed that, crime decreased once we saw the National Guard come in. And I want to talk about something that plays into all of this, because I thought the Supporter Report this week did some really great journalism, getting the actual numbers of officers who did not show up for work in the days after District Attorney Paul Howard charged the officers in the shooting death of Rayshard Brooks. The numbers, I think, really tell the story of morale at the Atlanta Police Department. Janelle, listen to the stats. According to the Supporter Report, more than 61% of Atlanta beat cops missed work on the day Howard announced the charges, and more than 65% were absent the day after. More than 95% of the officers in Zone 6 were absent the morning after the charges were announced. I mean, this was more than the blue flu. I mean, this was more like the blue plague. So is it any wonder there was so much violence, Janelle?
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing. I don't know why we're not acting as if we understand what's really happening, right? So when you have DA Howard making decisions off of from a political perspective and showing officers that their lives don't matter, that only the lives of those who enhance them politically is what matters. And I see that even happening when it comes to the leadership of Atlanta. It's all really, really frustrating. I honestly think that, when we look at everything that's happening right now, from the National Guard to the DA to the police officers, none of this should be happening. We should have addressed this much earlier. Again, it goes back to being reactive versus being proactive. We have a little girl whose mom has to bury her because they were trying to simply make a U-turn in the middle of the street. And we got elected officials that are condoning people standing in front of burned down buildings armed for no apparent reason instead of just going home. So we're in a real interesting time right now. And I actually feel sorry for our police officers because they feel so unprotected and unsupported. We have got to start facing the music and be real about what's happening and put our political agendas to the side and actually look at what's really taking place in the city.
Kathy, I think the mayor seemed to point the finger this week at Paul Howard, but what can be done to boost morale for the police department?
Well, I think the mayor and other leaders have got to be very, very present with the police. I think they need to start by having conversations with them and talking and letting the police department be a part of how we make that change. I think that there are police officers who know full well what kind of changes need to happen for us to do a better job, and frankly to give them some relief from having to deal with people who are mentally ill or have other needs that they are not best suited to deal with. We also have to think about the policies that got us to this place, right? And I've mentioned it before. We have open carry in the state where people can stand anywhere they want to with their weapons displayed. When you do that and you get into a heated situation, people tend to get hurt. And unfortunately, we had a tragedy of the greatest magnitude when that happened. There is a lot to be done, but the failure of leadership is just across the spectrum. And what I see or what I sense is that people aren't talking to each other, and we have to put politics aside. We are at the gravest place in my lifetime that I've ever seen us as a country, as a city, as a state. And the governor needs to be talking to the mayors, the president needs to be talking to the governors, and we all need to be talking together about what's needed to right the situation. And it's going to be a big lift, and we can't have winners and losers based on politics. Everybody's
all good
got to
points,
be
everyone.
the best
I know a
kind
lot
of
of our
we can put together.
Facebook followers say we need an hour show, and sometimes I really agree with them. Lots to discuss. Well, coming up, Senator Kelly Loeffler says the Black Lives Matter movement seeks to destroy American principles. We'll discuss after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler comes out strong against the Black Lives Matter movement, saying it seeks to destroy American principles. Janelle, she calls Black Lives Matter anti-Semitic, and she wrote a letter to the WNBA objecting to their use of placing anything related to the movement on team jerseys and on the courts. Do you think that this will be a strategy for Republicans? You're her honorary chairwoman.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much of a strategy, but here's the thing, Lori. Bitter food tastes good to the hungry. And I feel like people in my community, the Black community, is refusing to look at what the actual organization stands by or what they are representing versus just understanding that we're standing on the slogan, because the slogan is what created the platform. The organization itself is all about removing the patriotic figure or the father figure in the home. It's for defunding the police. It's for burning down Black-owned businesses and all this other craziness that we're seeing happening right now. And that is what Senator Loeffler is against. This is not about being racist or anything like that, because she was one of the first people that spoke out against the Ahmaud Arbery case. This is about understanding that what's happening right now has nothing to do with police brutality, and it has nothing to do with uplifting the Black community.
Theron, weigh in here. I mean, what is the Black Lives Movement really about?
I'm very disappointed in my colleague's response there, but I would tell you this Black Lives Matter movement all started because a unarmed African-American male, Michael Brown, was murdered in Ferguson. And so a lot of us forget why we even had to begin a conversation to remind leaders that Black Lives Matter. I totally disagree with the policy stance that was just laid out. This is a movement that's now become not just a movement that started in response to murders, but it's a worldwide movement. But other thing about the comments for the WNBA, really quickly, Lori, is that I did some research. 90% of the people who are in WNBA right now, 90% of the female players are women of color, with an overwhelming majority of those 90% they're African American women. You only have 2, I believe, white players on the Atlanta Dream. So for the owner to come out and make this political desperation move, which I think is equivalent to just a half-court shot when you're down, going into halftime by 10 points, it's not about Black Lives Matter. It's about how she is trying to appeal to a conservative base that doesn't support her right now.
Phil, weigh in on that. Will this be a strategy for Republicans? Does this play to the Republican base?
I think what Kelly Loeffler is saying plays to everybody, or it should play to everybody, and that is, let's not have athletes just being used as political billboards. I don't think politics should be intruding in sports, and I think that her point was, when you have Black Lives Matter or Conservative Lives Matter on jerseys and merchandise, that's absurd. Let's just not have that. If you want to have the American flag as a unifying emblem, let's do that. And so I think that Loeffler's point is being lost. Yes, Black Lives Matter is a political movement. It's great to say all lives matter, including Black Lives Matter, but let's remember, Janelle's right. It is a political movement that's pretty radical.
Kathy, you want to weigh in here? Is this a political movement, according to Phil, that's radical, and does it have a place in sports?
You know what? I just think we're spending way too much time on Kelly Loeffler. There's 21 candidates in this race, and every time she opens her mouth, we don't need to discuss it. I think everybody on the panel has covered this topic pretty well.
Okay, we will leave it there, everyone. Stay tuned for winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And we will start with Kathy this week.
Great, thank you. Listen, for winners, I just want to thank the teachers and the school administrators and the school board members for having to make what are really, in essence, impossible decisions. We love you, we support you. Thank you for the work that you do. You're the winners this week, and you're the winners every week in terms of the work you do for our kids. Georgia Democrats are also winners. There's some great analysis out there about how well Georgia Democrats performed in the primary elections, and I predict a huge upset in November. Loser is Governor Kemp. I have to think there are policy decisions that he has made or not made, mostly not made along the way, that could have put us in a better place both economically and in terms of public health. Expanding Medicaid and raising the tobacco tax would have been 2 things that could have provided some relief, and next time I have 5 minutes, I'll rant a little more about that. Thank you.
All right, Kathy. And Janelle, over to you.
Yes, so my first winner is Dr. Martin Rogers. She's the founder of Parent University, Conversations and Education. She made a great point about opening schools. She referred to the connection between parents and teachers, and that's where it should start. And my loser this week is the Democratic Party of Georgia, who's pretending to care about the economy at this point. When Governor Kemp was opening up the state, they were telling people to stay home and not open their businesses. So no wonder the economy is in the position that it's in.
Okay. No mincing words there. Phil, over to you.
Okay, well, my winner is Governor Kemp for bringing in the National Guard, and my loser has to be Atlanta Mayor Bottoms. You cannot allow a zone where the burned-out Wendy's location was, where armed criminals are patrolling and then shooting 8-year-old girls. This is outrageous. She should have had the police clean that out far earlier. And my winner is the Atlanta Police Foundation for all the charitable work they're doing to try to support the officers in the force.
Okay, and Theron.
First, I want to offer my condolences to Securia Turner and the family of Securia Turner. Definitely horrific murder that occurred Also want to offer my condolences to Brother Rudy Cohen, who was a Clark College graduate, lifetime member Alpha Phi Alpha, lost his life this week. And then lastly, my winner is going to be Union City Mayor Vince Williams, who was elected president of the Georgia Municipal Association. And just because my colleagues made two, all of them had losers, I'll definitely make Senator Kelly Loeffler my loser this week for her inappropriate, desperate comments about Black Lives Matter.
Theron, we have a minute, so I would assume that Mayor Bottoms is a winner for you also?
Well, yeah, definitely. I was waiting for you guys to yell rap in my ear, but I didn't hear it. So, yeah, I definitely want to make Mayor Bottoms a winner for her outstanding leadership on a host of issues, and definitely praying for her and her family for a speedy recovery. So thank you, Lori, for allowing me to do that.
Absolutely. Well, I'd also like to congratulate Paige Alexander for becoming the new president and CEO of the Carter Center. And Israel Smith, who is a 6th grader at the Brookhaven Innovation Academy, he designed a video game to combat the stress of COVID-19. Players get to kill the coronavirus with a laser. If only we could do that in real life. So congratulations to him. Thank you so much, everybody. Make it a great week, and we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.